Hey,
All
Michelle.
right. Yeah.
You didn't tell me you was coming. Like,
I
welcome.
know. I was like, I'm gonna make it. I want to like write down some things you guys are saying since I'm so interested in talking to you about this anyway. So here you are already doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
So, Tanisha, yeah.
I'm back.
Okay. Oh, I can see everybody now.
Hey, nice to meet you, Miss Michelle. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for hosting this awesome event. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I have one every Sunday till the end of the year, and then we're going to have fewer. Hey, out there in Facebook land, it's friendly neighborhood pen lady to Dr. Tanisha Dandridge, and I'm here today with Kadada Fields, and she is our guest today on AcuPoint's Black Acupuncturist Meet and Greet. I think this is going live on Facebook right now, but as y'all well know, I am not tech savvy, and I am so proud of all the things that I do manage to accomplish as it is. So I'm going to give everybody a few more seconds to join us. Last week, I know we had like a ton of technical issues, y'all. I'm so sorry. I think we have gotten them all figured out, and not having Mercury, Mars, whoever, in retrograde. All the retrogrades. And today's topic is we are going to be talking about TCM nutrition and the way that we look at food from a traditional Chinese medical standpoint, because it's not the same as the way that a lot of people learn about nutrition or what's right for your body. It's really, really, really different in traditional Chinese medicine. Like, we don't do raw foods, we don't do fasting, we don't do smoothies, we don't do a whole bunch of juices. Like, these are things that are really not correct for your body. And then there are some people who shouldn't eat meat, and there are some people who shouldn't eat things like shellfish. And so we're going to get into all of that moving on down in the show. But first, I'm going to introduce Mama Fields. So Mama Fields and I go way back.
Yeah, we do.
Way back to Baltimore, as a matter of fact. Back in Baltimore, way before there was like a bazillion Black acupuncturists like there is now. There was like the two of us, and that's it. We were it. So Mama Fields also left Baltimore very much like I did, and she moved to Brooklyn. Welcome, Dr. Fields. Thank you for joining me today.
So nice to be here, Tanisha. I'm so glad you put this together. I'm happy to participate and get some information about us being in the field, Black acupuncturists being in the field, and helping to educate people. I'm so glad you put
Wait a minute. Oh, excuse me. Did I mention things were in retrograde? You're on my phone for questions. I'm sorry, Facebook.
So that was me echoing.
Yes, that was you on the big Bluetooth sound bar right here, because you're on the phone too. So we're on Facebook Live. The only way that I can monitor questions and people coming in is if I have multiple devices going. So sometimes it needs 3 happening so that I can kind of see where all the incoming questions are from. But Kadada Fields, we met back in Baltimore. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you became an acupuncturist.
All right. Well, like Tanisha said, we met in Baltimore. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I'm back here now. And I was in Baltimore for quite a few years. I went to college there. I went to Morgan State University, and then I ended up going to acupuncture school. I went to Morgan.
When did you go to Morgan?
I graduated in I don't remember I don't remember 98. No, yeah. I don't remember when I graduated, honestly. That might be high school.
Morgan. I was there from 96 to 99. I did not know that.
Yeah, maybe I didn't graduate in 98. I really don't remember the year I graduated, but I know that I started acupuncture school at Thai Sophia in 2006. So there was some time in between. I came back to New York, and I was doing hair for a while, and just got really good at it, and saw a gift that I had with my fingers and my hands, and I was like, yeah, hair is nice, but I want to do something bigger and deeper. You know, my mom had exposed me to acupuncture at a young age in her own self-care. So she studied acupuncture in the 70s when acupuncture wasn't fully legal to study. So I would see her putting needles in herself. She would do moxa on me and my siblings. So I was aware of a lot of the philosophy of Chinese medicine, like, don't sit on cold concrete. Like, she saw me sitting on the steps, she would ask me to get up, or not to eat anything cold out of the refrigerator. Of course, I didn't listen as a teen, but she did teach me those theories. And so after studying biology at Morgan, I was on a search to find something that I felt like spoke to me, find something that a career that I didn't really want to work for someone else, a career that would nourish me in a long way, a career that would be challenging, a career that would keep me healthy, because that is the thing. I don't always have healthy habits, but I aim to be healthy, and I just wanted a career that I felt like would kind of keep me in that path. And I just, so I found acupuncture. I had a coworker who I was working at Parks and People in Baltimore at the time, and a coworker was like, "Oh, I just started seeing an acupuncturist, and I really like it, and I'm going to Thai Sophia for the intro." And I was like, and I just the stars just aligned for me to roll into acupuncture. And I've been a practitioner for 10 years, and I'm really happy to be doing it. There's a struggle being a business owner. I struggle with that piece of it, but I have really become I'm really attuning myself and just getting better. I mostly work in a community acupuncture setting, so community clinics. I'm seeing 15 people in a 4-hour span, seeing, treating like 40 people a week plus, but this was before COVID, of course. Now, since COVID, we've had some changes, and I'm only treating 1 day a week, about 15 people a day. And, with lots of changes. So yeah, that's where I am with acupuncture.
All right. So you've been an acupuncturist for how many years now?
10.
10. Wow.
20 makes 10. I graduated in 2010. Yeah.
Congratulations. It feels good when you hit that 10-year mark, doesn't it?
It does. I'm like, wow, yes. Yeah.
I remember acupuncture school, and I graduated, I think, in 2008, and I started in Baltimore in 2009. And it was such a journey. It was so interesting. And one of the things that I really deeply, deeply appreciated about it, where'd you go? Michelle is back, and Kadada is gone.
I am.
There you go.
My bad.
I appreciated this whole round body of knowledge, and I wasn't anticipating getting a nutritional aspect in my education, and I was really excited to have something that's so rounded, to have the Tai Chi, to have the stretches, to have the Tui Na, to have the nutritional aspect. I remember when I went to Bastyr, when I left Baltimore, like, I was a diehard vegan, and I was trying everything in my power to be a raw foodist.
Yeah.
And I remember my dean at the time, like, I was just falling apart. Like, the long study hours, at least for the program at Bastyr, it was insane. There were times I was taking as many as 24 credits in what were they? They were quarters? It wasn't semesters, they were like trimesters. I think they were quarters, like 11 or 12 weeks long with a 1 week break. So I think they were quarters. And I remember, like, about 6 months into the program, like, I was just falling apart. And I didn't have any brain function. I was incredibly exhausted. I had, like, really bad adrenal fatigue. And I showed up at the clinic, and my dean at the time, she was just like, "So, are you a vegetarian?" I was just like, "Yes, I am. I've been a vegetarian for 5, 6, however many years it was at the time." And I was feeling really good about myself. She's like, "Yeah, pull down your eyes." And I pulled down my eyes. She was just like, "You've definitely been doing a really good job for a while." So here's the deal. You can either go eat a steak, or you can flunk my program. And I was like, "Wait, what?" I wasn't ready. I was like, no, you don't eat anything with the face. It's terrible. It's terrible. You don't do that. She's like, "Yeah, I get it. Whatever your reasons are for whatever it is that you're doing, you're still new in the program, so you haven't quite gotten to TCM nutrition yet. But the way that this is going to boil down to it is you can give up this style that's not suiting you. You can try dealing with the NDs to see if they can get enough nutrients in you for your brain to cut back on, or you can go eat a steak, or you can flunk my program. That's pretty much only these are your choices." And I didn't believe her, right? Oh my God, it's been so many years since I've eaten meat that if I did that, I would just die. Like, there's no way my body wouldn't reject it because it's not natural and it's not normal. She's just like, "Hey, wait till you get into the TCM dispensary and you see what we got up in there for them herbs. I promise you're going to change your mind." So I didn't listen, and I failed my midterm. And I was like, well, I said I wanted to come to school for this medicine. And so I'm going to have to trust this medicine. And this guy named Brett Lewis, strangely enough, I don't know if he remembers that or if he'll ever watch the show. Hey, Brett, he was just like, I'll make a steak for you. It'll be pretty good. I'm pretty good at making it. It won't be that bad. And so he made a steak for me, and it was delicious. And I licked the plate, and he had another one ready. When I finished the first one, and I thought I would be sick as a dog, and I wasn't. And man, I tell you, it was like instant B12 energy. My brain cut all the way back on, and I wasn't exhausted, and my cycles stopped becoming a mess because they had been fixed at one point and they were falling apart. So like, diet is really, really important, and we get a lot of isms, especially in places like Baltimore. We got a lot of isms about what diet is. So what is one of your favorite nutritional stories with clients and TCM nutrition?
Well, I want to say something before I even talk about clients, about what you said, about the like being a vegetarian and being a vegan, because I was in the same situation when I came to acupuncture school. I was mostly vegetarian. Like the year before, I had started dabbling in meat a little bit, but I had been a vegetarian for maybe 10 years before that. And I was extremely deficient. I was tired. I couldn't, I was cold a lot. I was cold, especially in the summertime. In the winter times, I was like,
right?
I was just, my teachers would just take my pulse and look at me like, wow, I don't know what this is what it is. The vegetarian role is not working for you. They laid out all the things that are happening, and I'm degrading. And they were like, look, my teacher told me that one time. He looked at my tongue and my eyes. He was like, yeah, you should for lunch. I would hope you would go have some meat for lunch. I was like, oh. So and I think it surprised me, and I think it surprises a lot of my patients who are new to acupuncture, new to Chinese medicine, because there's so much information out here that says vegetarianism is the main way to be healthy. It's like the way to be healthy. I eat lots of vegetables still. I just incorporate some meat. I eat lots of vegetables. I definitely am not saying that eating vegetables is terrible at all. It's just incorporating some meat definitely can help build us up. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yes.
My favorite client, let's see, gosh, working at a community clinic, I see so many people, and it's like, I don't really have one favorite client. I have clients that are like categories of clients that I am, my favorite client, let me think of my favorite client. I gotta have
Your favorite 2 or 3?
Yeah, I have, so I have some women, I have a woman who currently has bone cancer. And this woman amazes me because she is so full of joy and love. And I'm just, every time she comes, I'm just like, what? Even if I come in that day and I'm like, not having the best of a day, I'm human. And I see it, and I'm just like, I don't even understand where she pulls it up from, because she has had rebouts of cancer. It just keeps, I've just started working with her for about 8 months, but before she came to see me, she's had cancer, she's had it and it's went away, and she's just such an inspiration. So that, I would think, she comes to mind first as like my most inspiring patient. But I like my patients. I love when my patients are like, the women who are trying to get pregnant, or the women who are having menstrual issues, or the person who's coming to me with tired. I'm like, well, what are you eating? They're like, oh, I'm eating good. I eat healthy. I wake up, I have my shake, and then I have my salad, and I just be sitting there like, oh, I'm about to break this person's heart. I'm about to ask them to totally change their diet, and some do and some don't. And I have everyone who changes and makes a shift feels better, and so that's like my category of favorites. And at the moment, I'm also thinking about not particularly favorite, but an awakening. Like I had a teacher, Lonnie Jarrett, point out this feel in the pulse called nervous system tense. And he makes it particularly, he just said you should particularly look out for this pulse on a certain person, I'll say it on Jewish people. We should look out for that pulse just because of their history of being oppressed, just like Black people. I asked him one day, I said, so what supposed does Black people have, John Lon? He said, that's for you to find out. He died. I don't know. He doesn't see a lot of Black people. So anyway, so it's so interesting that I have patients who come in, even before I see them, I look at their intake and they're having like their chief concern is like cramping or loose stools and all these digestive issues. And I'm like, okay, I look at their name. I'm like, I'm like, I wonder if this person's Jewish. Many of the times, if the person is a Caucasian person, they're Jewish. And I'm learning like, wow, that really is a thing, that the nervous system, is so tense and is like on this fight or flight and can't really settle, and it begins to affect their digestive system. So so it's
big conversation about that epigenetic inheritance and so you will find that in Indigenous Americans, First Nationers. You will find that in Jewish individuals who unfortunately had ancestors who survived the Holocaust, and you absolutely find a lot of this digestive upset in the African American community, simply because of the history, right? And so have this weaker digestion, you have to be kinder to it. And a lot of folks, salads and smoothies are it. And I tell folks, it's like, what is the baby's first food? Do you give a baby salad? Is that the first thing you give an infant? Not at all. No. So that epigenetic inheritance plays a huge role, not just in the way your nervous system functions, but also in the way that your digestive system functions, because your digestive system is a huge portion of your total body function, right? It's a huge portion of your total body function, and it has its own immune system. So particularly in light of things like COVID, right, when people need to be getting extra nutrients, what are some of the recommendations that you're making the folks that you see?
Well, one thing I'm recommending is that people stay away from the salads, particularly, and everybody's different. There's not like one person using tongue, using pulse. I guide people, but many of the people who are eating salads as an everyday meal, I have to steer them away from that. So I generally recommend that people eat warm foods in the morning time, particularly as the season gets, now we're in fall and we're moving into the winter. Incorporating ginger tea in the morning, like having a cup of ginger tea in the morning, give that. I think about it as like giving the digestive system a kick. You've been asleep for 8 hours, 7 hours, hopefully, and you're waking up, and it's nice to give the digestive system a little kick with some ginger tea before you go into giving it food. And that meal should be something warm. And I tell clients, you can eat breakfast food, but soup is not. You can eat soup for breakfast. You can have kale, and you can have kale with your eggs for breakfast, with your boiled eggs. You can have bok choy with your breakfast. You can have, and so it like just gets people rethinking. So that's some of the recommendations I make is ginger tea, warm foods, making sure that you are eating at least two good meals. People say 3, but some people's stomach just really can't take 3 full meals, but 3 good meals a day, and trying to eat like in some sort of rhythm, like not sporadically, not all like the body likes rhythm, we like to sleep, we like to wake, we like to, and so the body likes some sort of rhythm. So doing your best to like eat about the same time per day. That can be difficult for some people, but you're aiming for it. And also to it's not always what we're eating, it's also how we're eating. Not on the go, not rushing, not walking to the train. I remember when I first came back to Brooklyn, I would be like, oh my God, people are walking down the street eating. I was like, what? But in Maryland, I drove my car. I used to drive a stick shift and eat, please. I was just, just trying to get it together.
Go lifestyle that we have in the US. So, like, that's just how it is. Like, I'm oftentimes find myself eating in my car, but like, I'll stop, right? I was like, I'll at least stop and park, and then
right. Yes.
And the reason why we say that, particularly in traditional Chinese medicine, is because we do have 5 systems, and the 5 systems have certain habits that they like to have observed. And so the system that we're talking about currently is the middle jiao, or the spleen and stomach system. And the spleen and stomach system, it does not like to be hurried, and it likes things to be in a rhythm. Like your spleen likes it when things, and so does your liver. It likes it when things are happening on a regular basis. If you're going to get up at 8, you're going to get up at 8. If you're going to eat at 9, you're going to eat at 9. If you're going to pee at 8:45, then you're going to pee at 8:45. And the body wants to do these things at the same time, pretty much every day. That's your circadian rhythm, right? So I think it might be useful if we like jump in a little bit into the 5 systems, and so maybe people can get a little bit of an idea of how we think and look about systems and nutrition in traditional Chinese medicine.
Okay. So I'll talk about, so you already jumped in with the spleen and the stomach. And that is, I'll just go in and say we associate those organ systems to the earth element and to the late summer season, which is sometimes a season to miss because it's like that humid late August, which we got in New York this year. And then also can be looked at as the seasonal, the transition into other seasons. They say there's like a 2-week period where there's like a kind of late summer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's summer. The flavor for that, I meant late summer. The flavor for that is sweet. And so when I'm going to say flavors, when we say each organ system has a flavor that kind of goes towards those systems. So the sweet goes towards the spleen and the stomach. And then we have I'll just go around the cycle. Then we have meadow, which we're in now, which is the fall/autumn, and that's the lung and the large intestine. The flavor for that is pungent. And the pungent is like, it's like food that be like, so like peppers and like radish and horseradish.
Yeah.
They when you eat them, what's that green thing that comes with sushi? Wasabi.
Wasabi.
Like you be like, yeah. So that's like the punch, and that flavor goes to the lungs and large intestine. Then we move on to the winter season. The water, which is the kidneys and the bladder, and salt. Salt is their flavor. Salt kind of like heals and goes to the kidneys and the bladder. Onto the springtime, which is the wood and the liver and the gallbladder. That flavor is sour. So you got, the lemons and those kind of foods, astringents they pull in. They go towards the liver and the gallbladder. And then you have the heart. The fire summer season has actually 4 organ systems to them. You have the heart and the small intestine, and the pericardium, which is the heart protector, and the triple heater, which is not an actual organ in a place in the body. It's more like areas of the body, the upper part of the body, the middle part of the body, the lower part of the body, and like a little bit like a highway, but of the system. And the taste there is bitter, and that feeds leans towards those organ systems.
Yes.
I hope I didn't go too fast.
Well, I'm sure we'll get questions. People can go back and watch the video if that's what it comes down to. And so all of these organs have particular flavor that helps them to heal. And then strangely enough, if you have too much of any of these flavors, in Chinese medicine, we always try to do balance. And so if you have too much of any one of these flavors, then it counteracts, right? It begins to take that system down. For example, for your spleen and stomach system, you don't want to do a whole bunch of that sweet, right? So that includes your smoothies. Like, it amazes me how many people never think about the fact that all this fruit that you're putting in your smoothie is sugar. I don't care. Yeah. From fruit, it's still sugar. Bananas are sweet, mangoes are sweet, strawberries are sweet. They still contain sugar. The body doesn't care where the sugar came from. It just cares that there's sugar, right? And so if you have too many of these sweet things, then you begin to break down the spleen. If you have too much of salt, then you begin to break down the kidney. If you have too much astringent foods, then you begin to break down the liver system, and so on and so forth. So you want to have a balance of all 5 flavors. Say that 5 times fast.
And it's nice to have those. I took an Indian cooking class, so I think I would assume this was like Ayurvedic, theory, but it's the same in Chinese medicine. A lot of the food theories kind of overlap, but to try to have meals that incorporate all the flavors a little, and it also, this is again, it's tailored, can be tailored to a certain person. Some people need a little more sweet than a little extra pungent, a little sour, and some people can't do salty. Some people need the bitter, but it's nice to try to incorporate all of them depending on your situation.
Yep, what's happening with your constitution and your current condition. So also part of that in traditional Chinese medicine is that we have diagnostic criteria that is outside of just the 5 systems. So we have things like damp and heat and cold and qi deficiency and blood deficiency and jing deficiency. And you can eat for those things too. You want to speak a little bit on that, Mama Fields?
Yeah, so let's see. So if someone tends to be damp constitution or damp, when I say damp constitution, I mean that your body tends to be damp. You might have a lot of sinus issues sometimes, or you might have breathing and asthma stuff because some of the mucus can be stored in the lungs. So you might have Dampness can show up as issues with the sexual organs, with the menstrual cycles or stuff with men. It can show up as being extra bloated and having edema. It can show, there's different ways it shows up. You want to stay away from certain foods. You want to stay away from too much sweet. You want to stay away from too much sugar, which goes into the body and creates mucus. You want to stay away from, you want to reduce and stay away from dairy and dairy products. You want to stay away from cheese. You want to stay away from milk. You want to stay away from carbohydrates, which, in our, I feel like the American diet is full of carbs. It's a carb heavy diet. And, if you don't plan your meals and take your food with you and you go out, you're stuck with getting something, carbs there. And that turns into sugar, which then can turn into sugar. It turns into, it's carbohydrates, which turns into sugar, which can turn into mucus in the body. So many of my patients are like so mad when I'm like, oh, I gotta stop cheese. And I'm like, yeah, like pull it back a little bit. Like and I'm not, what comes up next is I'm not really sure about those substitutions. I tried them years ago, there's this thing about these overly processed foods, and these fake cheeses are really overly processed foods. They're really, so I don't really have a verdict on those, but cheese.
It's not food. That's what I tell people. It's like, if you're going to eat the food, then eat the food and then take it out of your diet. And what you'll find is when you're not eating those things, that you will notice the way that your body does not process them well. You will some mucus in your nose or your lungs or in your digestion. You will feel the bloating. You will feel all the things that are beginning to happen in your body.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
But when you live that way 24/7, then you don't notice the difference. So with this, we tell people stay away from sugar, stay away from greasy foods, oily foods, and that's definitely dairy, right? But and we also tell people to stay away from the cold foods, and that irregular eating also really does not help out with the spleen and stomach system. Thank you.
Yeah, the cold, I try to explain the cold to people because they are shocked that I'm saying that, because they're like, well, I want to, I should wake up and get greens. And sure, you should wake up and get greens. But if they're not stored in the refrigerator, I'm not terribly against you having a juice. But if it's stored in the refrigerator and it's cold, it's your first thing in the stomach. I have an issue with you doing that, particularly if you're showing to have stomach issues. If you're not having stomach issues, it may not affect you as bad. You may, have to look for it for the future. But in the present moment, you may not be having issues. But the stomach is a warm sack. It's like 100 degrees in our stomachs.
Right?
And constantly adding cold things to the stomach is asking it to work, asking a system to kick up and work more than it needs to. When you should be like, well, it's warm. Let me put something warm in it. When it's a system that you're already having issues with, you're already having loose stools, you're already having bloating, you're already having cramping with when you eat, then that your digestive is your system is a little weak, a little off, and you need to, think about the things that you want, listen to it, and think about the things that it likes.
I tell people to think back to high school chemistry, right? It was like in chemistry, if you wanted to speed up a chemical reaction, what did you do? You put the Bunsen burner under it. And if you wanted to slow down the chemical reaction and you wanted stuff to fall out of it and to congeal, what did you do? You made it cold. You stuck it in the refrigerator, you stuck ice cubes in it. So it's the same thing. Like, we are biomechanical chemical machines, and chemistry absolutely happens in our stomach. So if you want to slow down digestion, the easiest way to do it is to take the fire or the heat away from the stomach, to take it away from that 100 degrees and to bring it down to 70, because then your body has to work to bring it up to temperature in order to continue the chemical reactions, right? And I also tell people is just like, let me assure y'all, if y'all go look around the world right now, what you're not about to see is a whole bunch of people eating a bunch of salad and smoothies and juices. This is something that came on the scene in the 1970s, right? Because before blenders, you couldn't do this. Who was making juice without a blender, without a smoothie machine or a juice processor? Like, these weren't realistic. And then I also, if you think about like the way sanitation has worked across the world for most of history, even when people were super clean, you're still talking about crops are grown with poop. And so the fastest way to get a parasite is to eat something that hasn't had heat applied to it. So across the world, you might have had a piece of fruit. You might have had some garnish or something like that sprinkled on your food, but humans haven't been eating like this for thousands thousands and thousands of years. We are no longer apes. We've been cooking our food for thousands of years. And so that's definitely something that we should continue. And in terms of chi deficiency, when your acupuncturist tells you that, oh, you're chi deficient. If you're chi deficient, we're definitely not going to tell you to have a salad or a smoothie. You need to be able to is the densest nutrition possible in order to help build that chi capacity within the body. Take it away, Dr. Fields. Mama Fields. I get confused with the doctors.
And I'm acupuncture. I'm not a doctor. I'm a licensed acupuncturist. Well, I mean, a few things came up when you were speaking, because one thing that came up is seasonal eating. I think that helps people to say, okay, what season am I in? We're in fall. Where we have an abundance of pumpkins and squashes coming in. You have a lot of the daikon radishes, and I actually bought one the other day. And daikon radish, surprisingly, is a wonderful food to cut up and bake with some sprinkling of like some oil, some little oil, a little salt, not just a little bake it, and it like brings out its own sweetness. When I discovered that, I was like, ooh, that's a good one.
I like my daikon and my wonton. You chuck some daikon radish and wonton of the yes.
Okay, nice. So seasonal eating helps to guide us. You roll into the winter, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's certain foods that are abundant in the season, more abundant. You see them in your supermarket. That's like a red, not a red flag, but a flag to say, hey, this is in season. Let me eat some more of this. Watermelons in season in the summertime. They're full of water. They're cooling, but you're not going to find those in the wintertime. You shouldn't. I mean, we live in a world that we can almost get whatever we want.
Yeah, that's true.
It's good and bad. You know what I mean? But most of us are not sitting eating watermelons in the middle of the wintertime. Because there's just too much juice, too much water. You store in your refrigerator, it's cold. You're not going to eat that. Mm-hmm. But back to the chi, I often pair the chi and the blood. So back to the chi and the blood deficiency. When people are chi and blood deficient, and we know we can see that you're chi and blood deficient by feeling pulses, looking at your tongue, looking at your eyes, listening to you telling me that you're really tired all the time, so those are signs that the chi is weak and low, and the blood can be deficient too. And so that's when there's like, well, what's going on with your diet? What are you eating? Oh, I'm eating salads. Oh, I don't eat breakfast. I do. What is that new thing? The fasting, where I don't eat. I eat coffee in the morning with coconut milk, and I don't eat till 2:00. What? And then at 2 or 4 o'clock, people are not eating, but then they're tired, or they're like binging by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So you know what I mean? Generally, I recommend intermittent fasting. Eating
I just look at people like that's not
what is that called? It's called.
It's intermittent fasting. It's intermittent fasting where they have like this 6 to 8 hour period. That's the only time that they can eat. And there's all these studies about why this is a thing. And I'm like, yes, except that we have been grazers. We get food from hunting and gathering and eating and cooking at the same time. Like we've always been grazers. Again, none of this is a part of what has been a part of our human history. It's like, well, there's plenty of times that you couldn't get food. That's called a famine. That's not a normal time.
Right, which we hope that we're blessed that we don't have those, and at least in America, in our world, for the most part, we don't have those. But a thought came to me, and I forgot what it was, but all right.
Chi and blood.
Something I wanted to say about that. I don't remember, but okay, chi and blood. Let's see. We can, roll into the meat eating. So
meat eating is definitely important, when it comes to building up blood, but it's not just meat eating, right?
Yeah, it's not just meat. There's lots of vegetables, all the leafy green vegetables. You got the beets. You have seaweeds that are wonderful for the blood, nutritious for the blood. It's not just vegetables. It's not just meats. Mm-hmm. But particularly when someone like me raised my hand, was a vegetarian 10 years, and didn't eat any meat, and wasn't the greatest of vegetarian. I was basically eating crap and saying I was vegetarian, but eating some vegetables, and it was just. Then I depleted myself so much where I needed some meat. I needed a little bit of meat, and that conversation of meat is hard to have with some people. They're really against it for moral reasons, for the reasons the way that meat is processed, and for the all the information that we have now with the meat factories, and it's tough. It's tough to make that choice, and it's definitely not. It's not an easy choice when you've been eating vegetables for so long, and some people are raised as vegetarians, and there's all this philosophy behind it. So it is a tough shift. But you know, if you make the shift, and when I encourage my patients to make the shift, I encourage them to find places, sources of meat that is, as you know, farms. You know, when you live in places like Maryland, you have farms. You could go visit a farm and get with your friends and have them cut up. I knew people used to do that. Go get different meats and cut it up, and people would take people would go in and put the money in together and take parts of the animal, and you know that the animal has been killed, you know, basically the day before you came, or it was killed in a more humane way than like a mass killing.
Yeah, the CAFOs.
Right. You have like, you know, I'm grateful. I live in a neighborhood where I have like a little a little special market that is special, and they get their meat from upstate New York, and and it's more money, you know, and I invest in it, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be my meat for the next 2 weeks. And I'm not eating a lot. It's not saying your plate should be full of meat. It's really should still be 50% vegetables, 75% vegetables with a little bit of meat, you know, and you don't have to eat it every meal, and it doesn't have to be every meal. But some meat is required to build back the blood when it's been sold, especially when it's been so long. And it makes me think about many women who are trying to get pregnant. So at Brooklyn Acupuncture Project, I didn't say that I treat at Brooklyn Acupuncture Project right now. I've been there for 5 years, and it's like my home now. My private practice is currently closed because of renovations. But at Brooklyn Acupuncture Project, a lot of people come for fertility support. You know, they're trying to get pregnant, and you know, I put my hands down their pulses, and I'm like, we have work to do. You know, we got some work to do. Your pulse, I don't feel the pulse, or it's really thin, or it's really, you know, and I'm just like, I need you to eat. I need you to, you know, not eat, do the salads. I need you to have a little bit of meat. I need you to eat in the morning. I need you to eat some ginger tea. You know, it's work. But I think it's worth it. And I never want to feel like I'm overwhelming my patients. I always want to say, where are you? What are you doing now? Let's inch it in. You know what I mean? Let's start inching it in, because if you overwhelm, then, you know, I feel like overwhelming people, or like saying, stop that, don't do that, and start that, is not realistic, and it doesn't last long. I'm trying to educate people and help them to make changes for their life. I'm trying to teach you how to take care of yourself for the rest of your life, not just, you know, not even just
not
when
just
you
give you a bunch of don'ts, right? You're not a toddler.
Right.
Just don't do this.
I'm not a don't. I'm like a don't. Or sometimes some people are at a place where there's too much going on. They have too much craziness in life. They have too much emotional stuff going on. I'm like, well, let's just add. You know, as you add the good, the bad kind of fades out.
It fades out. I call it the food vocabulary. It's like, well, what's your food vocabulary like?
Right.
The only vegetables that you know of are like broccoli, string beans, cabbage, and corn. Then that's where we got to start, right? We got to start with food vocabulary. And it's the same thing with grains, because grains are also important for building up chi and blood. We talk about not eating too many starches, but we also do need the good starches, because human beings do need a certain amount of carbohydrates. So if the only starches you know are rice, pasta, and white potatoes, then you're missing out on those pumpkins that are coming out, the kabocha, the delicata squash, the acorn squash, the spaghetti squash. You're missing out on regular pumpkin, which is actually pretty tasty. You're missing out on purple yams. You're missing out on golden yams. Like, there's a whole host of root.
Oh, so many.
Right. And then there's a bunch of grains. There's things like amaranth, there's things like millet, there's things like barley. We love barley. Barley and some beans, man, that is life. And that is about to be happening up in here, along with things like bone broth, right? If you're not ready to like just shut down a steak like I did, that's fine.
Yeah.
Bone broth from any animal is a great way of building up chi, blood. Then one of the other options that you have for getting clean meat, if you don't have a farm of, you know, readily available to you, is think outside the box. We are very accustomed to just chicken, beef, pork, and fish in the United States. But there are things like elk, there's bison, there's emu, there's silky chickens, there's camel, right? There is a whole host of different animals that are very edible to human beings. And most of these unusual animals do not grow up in CAFOs. They're not murdered just all kind of willy-nilly. They're not giving random feeds. They're much better, higher quality consume. That includes a lot of times like lamb and goat. So building up chi and blood, make sure that you have a porridge or so made out of a good wholesome grain, again, like millet, amaranth, quinoa, barley is a good one. Barley yiren is actually a Chinese herb. Barley is really good for you for building up that metal jiao, that chi, and that blood. And then we got dampness, and then barley is wonderful, isn't it? Yeah. And so another grain that people may or may not be accustomed with is teff. You can actually make a porridge. Teff is real bitter though. Woo! Teff needs to be fermented, and that's where you get your injera whenever you go and eat Ethiopian food, which is delicious. So,
Okay.
Oh my God, have you not had injera? Girl,
no, I've had injera.
Okay.
I love it.
And injera is really, really high in iron. So again, talking about that chi and blood building, it's high in fiber. It's high in a lot of trace minerals that are not your traditional breads. So we've covered dampness, we've covered chi, we've covered blood. We have a couple more to go. I don't see any questions on Facebook. So if you guys got any questions on Facebook before Dr. I guess you're going to a doctorate program, lady.
Maybe. We'll
name
see.
in front of you. So the still to be Dr. Kadada Fields, because I'm manifesting it for her. If you have any questions, Mama Michelle, if you have any questions out there in Facebook land, by all means, please type them in. I'll do my best to get to them for you.
We didn't talk about chi stagnation.
Yeah, let's talk about chi stagnation. Let's talk about heat. Let's talk about cold. We got about another 15, 20-ish minutes. And I think we can get quite a few of them in there. So let's talk about chi stagnation, because that is a super common diagnosis.
Yes.
And traditional Chinese medicine. We talk about chi stagnation a lot. You're stagnant. Your liver chi is stagnant. Your whatever is stagnant. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yes, liver chi stagnation. Let's see where to start with that one. It is, like Tanisha said, it's common. And the chi stagnates for different reasons. Chi stagnation is that things are not moving smoothly. And one of the reasons that they stagnate is that with the process of this emotion of anger is not being processed correctly. We're holding on to it. We're not processing it. We're not talking about it. We're not. Sometimes it's overly expressed, and sometimes it's underexpressed. It creates all this frustration and irritability. And so then it just causes all this things to get stuck. And when things get stuck, and particularly in the middle jiao, so the middle area of the body, when we say middle jiao, is like the middle section where the spleen, the stomach, and the liver and the gallbladder live, it affects the digestion, and it affects your assimilation of food, because the things are not moving smoother. And so I do also notice that some people with liver chi stagnation have difficulty digesting some grains. So it's like there's so many wonderful grains. And just pay attention to the body. One thing I think I didn't say is, with all of this, all this information you get about nutrition and things, is like, pay attention to your body. So everyone's gonna give you advice. I'm gonna give you advice.
Sorry, we had a question because we're talking about grains, and so
okay, let's see.
Who can't digest grain because it causes bloating. Not most people can digest some grains, like even if it's not rice or corn, there is usually some grain that some people can digest, but you still need a complex carbohydrate, which is where we brought up things like purple yams, the gourds that are out this season, and other root vegetables that you can have that are still starches if you cannot digest your traditional grains. Like there's usually something in the grain family that you can digest. And for most people, what causes digestive issues is actually the fact that they're sprayed, right? It is the fact that you're spraying this grain, which is creating a lot of the digestive issues. So there are other choices for you. If you just can't do any grain whatsoever for whatever the reason, then you can do root vegetables, you can do lentils, you can do legumes. There are options for healthy starches. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I got that question in there because it was rolling through.
Okay. I forgot what else. So liver chi stagnation. And so when the chi is stagnant, it can cause issues with the digestive system, and it can also cause issues with the whole system, not just the middle system. Liver chi stagnation can cause system issues with the breathing and with the uterus. You see it a lot. In a easy way to know if a woman has liver chi stagnation is you ask her about her cycles. People are like, why are you, I'm coming here for my back pain, or I'm coming here for my knee pain. Why are you asking me about my period? Because I just want to know the whole system, what's going on in the whole system. So if there's lots of pain, if there's lots of clotting, if there's lots of bloating during your cycle, a lot of digestive issues during your cycle, then there's something going on. We know, let's like, oh, okay, how's the liver rolling? Let's check in with the liver. there are these two, there's like the liver, the spleen moo points on the side of the body, like where the spleen, she collects on liver. That's my like go-to, like, let me check in and see what's going on. Cause that's like telltale. You can say whatever you want. Let me touch you. Let me
touch you.
Like,
And it's amazing how many people never get the rib cage touch. It's just like, no one's ever touched me there. And it's just like, oh my God.
I touch it all.
Hold on, we got a question from Michelle. I'm sorry, because I'll forget. And so Michelle, how do you feel about someone with eczema having oatmeal and fruit every morning? We usually hit the same patterns of food every day, but should it vary from one day to the next?
Well, eczema, I look at eczema depending on if it's like dry or like wet and flaky. It's like a damp heat situation. And I would tend to stay away from sugary things that create sugar, and because you're adding to that dampness, you're adding to it. And so I would, in question, I would say, try other foods for breakfast. You might want to try proteins for vegetables. You might, for breakfast, you might want to pull away from the fruit and the, because you're doing both, you're getting the fruit and, did you say fruit and oatmeal?
Fruit and oatmeal.
Fruit and oatmeal. So you're doubling up on the sugar there. You got two sugars there, because the oatmeal is just going to turn into the sugar and the fruit is sugar. So I would try to like play along with some breakfast that is a little more protein, a little on the protein side. And maybe even, and if you're doing oats, I would say look at steel cut oats, you know, doing the oats that come with that, it comes with a little more fiber, so it can go through the system a little better. And just observe and see, you know, eczema is a situation that is in the body and changes based on what you put on your skin and what you put in your skin. So yes, you have to look at what you're eating, and I would definitely look at not having so much sugar in the mornings.
Absolutely. There are definitely some better cereal porridge type things that you can make, including kanji, which is one of the favorites. And kanji doesn't have to be made out of rice. Kanji can also be made out of beans. So it's basically like eating beans and whatever else for the morning. Beans and barley, beans and millet, beans and amaranth, beans and whatever. Yeah. And it gives you something a little bit more savory. It has a lot more fiber in it, so it's slower to digest, which means it's slower to turn into glucose. And glucose is the basic currency of the body. You can't escape it, but you don't want it to just hit the body super fast. All right. Back to
kanji. Let's just say what kanji is. So people don't really always know what kanji is, because I tell people kanji too, but people don't realize like what really it is. It's like it's grain with a lot of water, and you're cooking it for a while and like getting it really mushy to get to it's like kind of like feeding a baby something soft that we can replenish the chi and the blood and the fluids. So kanji is just something that's cooked really. Sometimes you can do, like I've done a half a cup of a grain and like 4 cups of water, and just boil it for like an hour and move around my house getting ready. And then I have, you know, so that's what kanji is. It's like this really soft, like lots of water, really soft, soft cooked grain.
Soft cooked grains, and they're usually savory. Like kanjis do not need to be sweet. Right? So you can add your meat. You can cook them with bone broth. We like to make them in the house here with bone broth to them. And then it's really super nourishing, and it's a great place to put all of your herbs. So you can put your you can put your astragalus, you can put your little bit of dongguai in there, you can put a little bit of herbs, and then that long cooking time really helps to get the dense nutrition of those herbs and those various components that you're making your kanji out of. And then because it's been cooked so long, what happens, it's basically pre-masticated, right? It's pre-digested because it's been cooked for so long. And so your body doesn't struggle with it. And so that might be an option for you there, making sure I didn't get any more questions. Sorry, Facebook, sometimes I don't get the questions in a timely fashion. So again, back to that liver chi stagnation. A lot of people don't get touched in their ribs, and so stagnation can create pain, which is why we come in and we want to touch your rib cage and touch around your rib cage and find like where these stagnant points are. And that's important if you're experiencing pain, because we say where there is stagnation, where there is chi stagnation in particular, then we know that there is going to be pain, especially if you have a pain that's over here and then it's over there and then it's over here and then it's over there, moving, randomized kind of pain. We definitely want to work on the diet to make sure that we have a smooth flow of chi and blood, and that is definitely related to the liver and the spleen to traditional Chinese medicine. I don't know where we left off, but that's a good place to pick up.
Yeah. I mean, I guess some ways to tell people, some ways to help that situation, you know, movement helps, certain foods help, sour foods, the lemons and the What are some other foods? I sometimes have to refer to my book. Everything is not up in the head, but certain foods, staying away from certain foods. If there's stagnation, you're eating really, really like, like think about having a concentrated bowl of oatmeal versus congee. The oatmeal is just so thick, and it can be difficult when there's liver cheese stagnation versus having congee that's already pre-digested. It's not pre-digested, but it's so soft that you can give it to a baby. It just goes right through. So that the stagnation, you're not adding to the stagnation because it's just already so broken down.
Absolutely.
Of course, when there's liver cheese stagnation, I generally think about, I generally recommend herbs. I don't. It's not really something that I just depend on foods for that. And one of the things I'm really glad that Tanisha brought up was adding herbs to our food. It's a wonderful way to get herbs in. It's nice, It's like you can get little sacks, or you could just have it in there and pull it out when it's done. I mean, it's just. And some of the herbs like add such wonderful like flavors to the food. You're like, oh, this is nice. I like dong quai in my lentils, and I like, so it's a nice way.
It's a nice little flavor. And a lot of the flavors, like particularly like when you think of like Indian cooking, a lot of the flavors that we have at this time of year in the fall year, the pumpkin spice is like, people are like, why is everyone going crazy for pumpkin spice? What is it? It's like, because those are actually pungent, warm herbs that help to aid in your digestion, right? Your allspices, your cinnamons, your cloves, your cardamom, all of these things are really good for you. And these are things that don't have to be sweet. You can put allspice, cardamom, and nutmeg in your beans, in your congee, in your soups, in your savory foods, and add a little bit of salt to them because salt helps to soften hardness. And then you're getting these nice digestive herbs that will help your body to be able to process the food to have better qi and blood. So people are like, what herbs should I take? I'm like, what should you eat is a better question. This is what you should do as opposed to what you should take. Right? I definitely love putting herbs in my food. In fact, we got an herbal tea going right now. That's the one that created the catastrophe right before we started.
What
and it's just food. It was Asian pears because you probably have heard me every 5 minutes. We still have the smoke out here in California, and we're dying. I'm dying. I can't breathe. Right. So we had Asian pears. We had Budahan. I chop up Budahan at the end of January, and I put big bags of Budahan. It's a citron in my freezer. Budahan and Asian pears and a little bit of ginger and some cinnamon sticks and some chrysanthemum flowers. Right. All of these things are totally edible. This is this kitchen over here, and then a little bit of licorice because now we don't have to add any sugar. We have the pears, we have the licorice. Those are both very sweet, and it's a really good tea. We have a little cinnamon and gingers because it's warming, and the lungs don't want to be hot, but they do want to be warm. And then we add a little juha because it clears the heat, and that's definitely what we have out here. We have this toxic heat smoke happening in California. And then the Asian pears and the Budahan help out with coughing, and it just helps to moisturize the lungs because the lungs, while they don't want to be wet, they definitely want to be moist, right? Like you want to have well moisturized skin. You don't want to have alligator skin. Your lungs are the same way. They want to be a little bit warm. They want to be a little bit moist, but not too much in any one direction. So we call it mommy tea. And I have a chunk of astragalus in there, or her tea, as we call it in traditional Chinese medicine. And it's, it's basically food, and it's a delicious tea. Yeah. It's a tonic tea. It'll help build up your immune system. It'll help out your lungs. It just feels good. It's a little bit of mommy love, even though my child is mad at me right now. You always have a meeting. It's like, yes, I do.
Yeah, pears are good fall food. They're good for the lungs. That's to say pears, because I didn't know that until maybe a few years ago. I was like, oh, pears are good for the lungs. Yes, pears are really good for the lungs. I mean, and it's a sign because they start coming into the supermarkets more during the season. You know what I mean? Now I'm seeing the Asian pears. I'm like, okay, it's the season. 'Tis the season because they're everywhere. So that's how gives you a little bit of a clue as to what you could be eating as far as in season, because it shows up in the supermarkets when they're not there all the time as much, so.
Absolutely. So some other good lung foods, because, it is the time of COVID, lily bulbs, if you can find them, are great lung food. Asian pears. In fact, the recipe that I learned in school at a TCM nutrition class, it was like, you take a pear, you core it, you put a cinnamon stick in there and some rock sugar, and you cover it up and you bake it. Yeah.
That's really good though. That's really
delicious. That's a good dessert. And if you didn't want to do the rock sugar, then you could do the honey, and you just bake these pears and you eat these pears like this, and the rock sugar, the honey, and the cinnamon, like it diffuses out the pears, and you can like stab the inside of the pears to make sure that it's going all around. And people are like, well, you know, what can I take from my lungs? What can I take from my lungs? It's like, you know, sometimes it really is as simple as what can you eat?
Yeah.
Right. And then you can add a little pear to whatever it is that you're cooking. Like if you're making beans, if you're making grains, if you're making a congee, if you're making a soup, it's like you can chuck a little seaweed at it. You can also chuck a couple of pieces of pear at it. And when it's just a little bit, it's not really going to change the flavor of your food, but it will help with the viscosity level, the thickness, the way that the soup broth feels on your tongue. So I'm all about the kitchen medicine. All right, Facebook land, if you guys got any more questions, you definitely should jump in there because we'll be getting off real soon. So we talked about qi stagnation, we talked about qi and blood, we talked about damp, and then some of the last two most common diagnoses that you're going to see with traditional Chinese medicine and food is heat and cold. And we've kind of gone over this a little bit, but again, some of it's really common sense when you think about it. So in terms of having a cold diagnosis, if you're always feeling cold, if you always got cold fingers and cold toes and cold nose, if you're a healthy puppy, as I like to say, then there are definitely some things that you should be adding to your diet to kind of help increase circulation and help to warm the body up. Take it away.
Okay, my brain went somewhere. Let's see, you were talking about cold. Well, one of, the salad, eating the salads, eating the cold foods in the morning, you're making yourself work. You're just adding cold to the cold. Like, don't do that. And eating, basically, if there's a cold situation, you add heat. So you're adding warm to it. You can add ginger. You can add spices to your food. You can add like many of the spices you already discussed, like the cardamom and the cumin and the cinnamon, and those are warming. So if you're cold, and then it also goes with the season. As you move into colder seasons, you add warmer spices to your food. And when you're in the summertime, you might want to reduce some of those. You might want to take out all of those warming spices in your diet, and you're using parsley and some of the leafy stuff in the summertime. Let's see, what else I want to say about cold. Something that's coming up for me as far as cold, not particularly, I'm going off here with nutrition, but just because it's COVID season, and someone asked me if I was going to talk about that, and this is probably going to be it.
Please do.
The cold, protecting yourself from cold, protecting the back of your neck from cold, protecting your lower back from cold, protecting your ankles from cold, protecting your knees from cold. I mean, when there's sometimes I see people out and I'm like, wow, they have on those remember the low rider jeans was thing, and they have the backside. I would be like, oh, my heart would just break, like you just putting cold right into your kidneys. Oh, you're gonna feel that later. You're probably gonna feel that later in life, really. But the back of the neck, we say there's the gallbladder points and bladder points that we say like they can allow things into the body right there.
Wind gates.
So it's really important to protect that area of the body. Is to protect the neck when it's cool. People always joking because I have a scarf on in the spring and the fall time. I just be like, whatever.
Right? Like I just bought me a new one, and I'm like, I ain't going nowhere, but I'm gonna walk around my house with my scarf.
So I just wanted to say that as far as like colds, like keeping colds from coming into the body. You're, using warm foods to keep yourself warm inside so that you can push your qi out, so you can have this, what we in Chinese medicine we call defensive qi or wei qi, to keep it strong. And then you wearing certain clothing and making sure clothing to also be a layer of protection as far as letting things into your body. I mean, COVID-19 is a serious, as we all know, and we're probably coming into an outbreak again. And we have learned so much about protecting ourselves by covering our mouth. We still need some oxygen sometimes. So it's, like walking around with those masks on all the time. It's nice if you're not in a crowd to take it off and get some fresh air into the lungs. Doing some fire breaths in the morning. I don't know if people know what fire breaths are, but it's like you're holding your tummy and you're pumping. You like take a deep breath and you use the stomach to like pump the air up. It's fire breaths to like get the lungs, wake them up in the morning. Another nice thing is to like pluck the tips of particularly your lung. The lung meridian ends out on the thumbs, and the large intestine starts in the thing. On the pointer finger to just wake those up. You could do them all, just wake up everything. You waking up, just wake it all up. But that's another way. Also cupping the hand and like tapping onto the lungs is a nice way to like just get them a little woken up, because a lot of people are really concerned about protecting themselves for the preparing themselves for the winter,
For the upcoming lung season.
for the COVID, for the COVID season and for the flu and cold season. And it's which is fair, it's a scary, immunity in Chinese medicine, immunity, it comes from our digestive system. It comes from your food. It's like the food and the digestive, the strength of your digestive system goes up to the lungs, and it creates a strong lung system, and the lungs help keep things out when it's coming in. And so the digestion is your food, and your digestion is totally tied to your immunity, to your immune system.
Definitely, absolutely. All right, so definitely eating the warming foods. There's also cooking methods when it comes to food. Grilling food.
Oh yes,
impart the most heat into your food, and then obviously a light stir fry / saute imparts the least amount of heat. And so this is why we have more of a recommendation to lightly saute and stir fry your summer. You don't have to like cook them to death, because I don't want soup in the summertime. Although I have to tell you, like, if you've ever been to some of the hottest parts in the world, they eat soup year round. They don't care, right? And hot peppers.
With pepper in it.
Peppers. I grow my habaneros and my Thai chilies right now that I'm about to go harvest and make some peach jam with. Because habanero garlic jam is delicious. Right. And then for cold, some of the more cooling things that you come across, we've talked about watermelon, but you also have cucumbers, mint, parsley, as you said, cilantro, which is definitely one that is overlooked quite often. Like cilantro is a great food. I love cilantro.
I love it. I love cilantro.
And cilantro is a vegetable. It is not a seasoning. You can't put enough of that stuff on there.
Yeah.
Right. So cilantros are some other good ones. We've mentioned things like watermelon and even radishes. Radishes are kind of neutral, but because they have a lot of water in them, then they are foods that you can incorporate to increase the water or the yin in the body and to help to cool off. All right. So we are running slightly over time, and I don't want to be abusive of your time, Mama Dr. Dada Fields. Not yet, Doctor needs to go ahead and like run that program. Dr. Fields, are there any other shots besides making sure that we wake up our lungs and take deep fire breaths and pluck our fingers first thing in the morning to help increase that circulation? Are there any other things that you would love to impart with us before we close out for the evening?
I would just say self-care is high. Self-care goes high, and nutrition is important, but just the way we're giving ourselves some self-care. And this is just a really tough time, not just with COVID, just with all the social, all the racism issues coming up, all the social injustices coming up, dealing with a president who just does not seem to care about us. It's a lot to process. So it's a lot of self-care, and all of that stress and stuff aggravates the system. And, one of my woman I like to follow, and I've done some meditations with her, Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. I'm not sure if you know of her. She's Radical Dharma, and she wrote a book called Radical Dharma and Being Black. And she said, self-care is a radical act. It's like a revolutionary. It is. It's revolutionary for us because we have haters. We have people who hate us and who don't want us to survive. And taking care of ourselves is revolutionary. And so and that is what, that's the biggest thing. Nutrition is huge. And I beg people to just at least step outside of their comfort zone and to try different things and to really not stay in the norm of what they're eating, to pay attention to their bodies if it's not working, and to try new foods and to get out there, try new recipes. It's just it's really important for the body.
It's really important to increase that overall food vocabulary, which is why most vegetarians feel really good for the first couple of months that they're vegetarians, is because they're getting an increased amount of vegetable matter, which is really, really important, like more so than the grains, more so than the meat. What's important is having this huge food vocabulary that you can pull from, because if it's wintertime and you don't have your usual food choices, there's no broccoli and there's no cabbage, then what are you going to eat? Right. So you need to be able to have a wide variety of foods to choose from. Someone says, what about legumes that cause bloating? Everything is not for everybody, right? And this is the importance of seeing an acupuncturist and seeing a healer and working with a healer. It's important because then you understand what things are for you and your constitution and your current condition. Like these are really broad, sweeping ideas. And we have books that are, we have tomes, right? We have books, huge ones on food recommendations for people. But the first thing that you just really got to get to is that you have just got to try this whole world of foods out there. And if you can't eat a legume and you can't eat a bean and you can't eat a grain, maybe you just don't like them. And that's fair. Clients are like, I don't like beans, period. I'm not eating them. It's like, great, don't eat them. What are you going to eat instead? Because I can walk around anybody's grocery store and find something to eat. Can you? Right? So increase your food vocabulary. Speak with your acupuncturist. Call your local acupuncturist today and schedule an appointment to get poked. You can see Mama Kadada Field, soon to be doctor, because I'm fortunate on her. Acupuncture? Where was it? I'm sorry.
Say it again.
What's the name of your clinic?
Oh, the clinic, Brooklyn Acupuncture Project. It's in Gowanus. Gowanus, part of Brooklyn. And then you can also visit the website blackacupuncturist.com. That's it. That Dr. Dandridge put together for us. Her own website. She's not even, but blackacupuncturist.com. They have acupuncturists, black acupuncturists throughout the United States, categorized by state. So it's a wonderful website. It's a wonderful resource for people to go and find someone who they want to work with.
Awesome. All right, y'all. I'm going to see you next week where I am going to have another treat for you. His name is Chris, and he is actually an acupuncturist to the stars. Since we're having football and basketball season right now, this man actually treats professional athletes. So us next week and learn a little bit about sports medicine because it's a little different style of acupuncture. Go follow us on blackacupuncturist.com. Go see Mama Kadada Fields on Broken Acupuncture. You can find me on Everyone's Place. And I'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for joining. Mama Kadada.
Thank you.
Hang up.
Thank you, Dr. Dandridge. It was nice to see you.
It was nice to see you too. Hold on, Mama. Don't hang up.
Okay.
I'm trying to stop some stuff. My